Hello and welcome to what's going to be an episode of basically me and my friend Kendra hanging out and talking about some of our favorite stuff. So, just so you guys know, we've already been diving into some of our favorite cheat codes. That's what we're going to be talking about today. A lot of different neuroplasticity topics and cheat codes that you can use in your life to get to where you want to go to achieve your goals. You can do a lot of healing with these practices, and a lot of them are going to help you connect more with yourself, with universe, God, source, whatever it is that you believe, and connect with the future that you want, which I think is what all of us deeply desire, to know that the future that we desire, the person we want to be, is not only attainable, but it's something that we can connect with and make active practical steps and make a process and a system towards it. It can be a little bit difficult when you're in the woo-woo, when you're in the spiritual, when you are heavy in your faith, if you're big into religion, whatever it is. If it's not tangible, it can be a lot more difficult. So that's one of the reasons that my friend Kendra and I love not only having one foot in the science, but also having one foot in the spiritual so we can balance it out. And Kendra is a genius when it comes to all things that have to do with the mind, especially neuroplasticity. My friend Kendra here has been my friend. She's been my client. We've worked together one-on-one. We've worked together in the sisterhood, and she has taught me an enormous amount with her wealth of knowledge isn't even the right term. Like, this is something that you don't just have a lot of knowledge about, you are so intuitive with a lot of this work. And it's because of the base and the foundation of knowledge that you've grown and the work that you've done, but it's innate within you. I truly think that this work is something that you were put on this planet to do. So thank you for everything that you've taught me. And I'm really excited for everything that you're about to teach them. And I'm going to read right from here because I want to make sure I get this right, because my friend Kendra, I met her when she was a traveling nurse. So I want to make sure I say what you are and what you do properly. So I'll read it. But you guys, I'm going to tell you about how Kendra and I met and like the coolest adventures that she was on here in a moment. But Kendra is a woman who is a nurse. She used to work in major trauma centers and now she works in mixed ICU. And she has such an incredible understanding of how the brain works, how the mind is able to be so resilient and retrainable, and knowing how to work with ourselves instead of against ourselves. That's something that she works a lot with the patients that she sees every single day, and a lot of the projects that she heads, not only in her everyday life, but I remember all the different things that we talked about you were doing on the side. You're always finding new ways to make things happen. So my friend Kendra George is here, and we're going to talk to you about the cheat codes. Before we do, Kendra, would you like to introduce yourself?
Oh my gosh, I don't know what to follow up after that. Thank you so much. You are so
You're
sweet.
welcome.
Yes, Heather and I met organically quite a few years ago whenever I first started working as a traveling nurse.
Yeah.
Um, we were fire and gasoline.
We
We
still are.
yes. But I moved on, started traveling to some other states. We had stayed in connection, but we're kind of peripherally friends, and I was able to see you grow. I was able to see you start this business. I was able to see you start an empire of growing women and empowering them and being able to create a community where they felt safe and loved. And I am just so proud of you for doing that and being able to watch that along the way. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to make you cry, but I
It's
love
fine. It's
you.
fine. I'm totally on board with it. I
And
fucking love you so much.
obviously, I saw a lot of good merit in what you were doing. That's why I wanted to work with you one-on-one. I'm a big believer in when you are too close to something, you can't see the other options that you have. Sometimes you have to have somebody who can help you take a step back, and can help you do that. I have lots of friends and coworkers who have asked me, especially since they're very science oriented, kind of what the difference between life coaching and therapy is.
Yeah.
And I I'm a very analogy type person. My brain works in all of these pictures. So I imagine that a therapist is like you have called a plumber because your plumbing is broken, to come and fix a certain thing. And I
Yes.
feel like a life coach is like talking to an architect or an interior designer about this home that you want to build, this life
Yeah.
that you want to build. And they walk you through, well, what do you want? How do you want it to function? How do you want it to feel? And then when you tell them those things, they tell you the practicality of maybe how to make those things work. So I am so glad that you do what you do. I'm glad that we're friends, on top of that. But I love you very much, and I'm so glad to be here. So when you originally had approached me about doing this, I told you I wanted to talk about neuroplasticity. And a lot of that has to do with I'm a nurse, first and foremost. It is most of my identity. It is what I want to do, care for others, any given day. It doesn't really stop whenever I leave the hospital. Like, I think that nurses are just nurses at heart, and that's what kind of led them to go to that. As I've moved from trauma into ICU, we saw head injuries a lot in trauma, but we didn't really see as they recovered in that process, which over the last 4 years, I've been able to work with neurology and neurosurgery and kind of learn really in depth about why the brain is the final frontier and why, like, those patients, we can't know how great those patients are going to do. Two different patients can have the very same injury and have two very different outcomes. And I believe a lot of that is mindset, especially after doing a lot of this work with you. And as that evolved and as I watched more brain injured patients heal and how they healed, I started talking and we started working together about how we can use cheat codes. So why does the brain have to be injured for us to be able to redirect some of our thoughts, our feelings, and how we're doing in the world? I also had a therapist one time we were talking about, I suffer from anxiety, and we were talking about how I was like, I shouldn't feel sick. Like, I shouldn't identify with this. I have a home, I have a job. I'm so thankful and grateful for this life that I have. Why do I still experience anxiety? And she had told me, she goes, well, often it's not that we as individuals are necessarily sick. It's that the world is sick, in the sense of that a few hundred years ago, we were waking up with the sunshine and with human voices and birds. Now we're waking up to alarms. It's still in the dark. We are watching blue screens all day and computers, and we're running and there's noises, and we're, walking down a busy street. All of these things make it really hard for us to shut off that fight or flight response that we have. And I think that, we just kind of get stuck on the hamster wheel. So I think, like, as we have been working through the program and as I work with patients outside of here, also trying to take some of this that we've learned together and me to pass on to other humans that I meet along the way, it's how do we get off the wheel?
Yeah.
And I think that some of these cheat codes that we have talked about and about understanding neuroplasticity and how we can retrain our brain has really been how I've gotten off the wheel, and how, I think many others could too.
Yeah. Oh, you're so smart. You're so damn smart. A lot of things I want to touch on because you're brilliant, and I think that you just brought up so many incredible points that I know the listener is probably like, can we please go back to that? Because I want to touch on it. I just have to say, like, it's really cool to sit here and watch you, like, friend to friend. I'm gonna cry. Fuck. It's really cool to sit here and watch you because, like I said, this is something that it's not something you learned. Like, this is so much your soul's work, is to understand this and to apply it and to look at your own processes and systems. And like you said, to share it with the humans along your journey. Like, your title of a nurse is incredible, but I just want you to know, I see you as a healer. I see you as so much more than a nurse. I see you as this woman that's been put on this earth to be able to blend the science and the spiritual, to be able to blend the soul and the practical, so that way we don't lose touch of who we are and what we are. Because what you were talking about with the way that we live now, and that it's not that there's something wrong with us, it's that there's not a system that's in place to keep us in an elevated state, in the places and spaces we want to be. And like, the fact that you understand that and that you're sharing that and that you live that, that's so important, because there's such a big, thick line that can be drawn in the sand and become a belief within us that it is that there's something wrong with us, we can take that on. And then once we start agreeing to the fact that there's something wrong with us, then we look for more things that are wrong with us. And then, like you were just talking about, with all these things that don't work anyways, at least not in large amounts, moderation for everything, balance for everything, when you're not doing it, you go, I mean, I know the first time we were in the program, we talked about consumption and distraction. You go on the fucking internet and you're trying to find, okay, what's wrong with me here? What's wrong with this? What's wrong with that? What do I need to do? When all you need to do is go out and get in the motherfucking sun and put your feet on the ground and focus on the things you actually want in life instead of the shit that you don't fucking want. And like, it's okay to have big feelings, but don't live there. And the fact that you know this, live this, teach this, and that you understand it to the depths that you do, it's so cool, because I remember playing pool with you drunk as fuck not that many years ago when we were damn near dancing on bar tops with our boots on, getting ready to kick down doors.
Sometimes you need that too. Like you said,
do.
everything in moderation. There should still be nights that you try to dance on bar tables and play some pool with strangers. There's nothing wrong with that. That can still bring a lot of joy.
I love it.
I love how you were talking about, you know, kind of back to the basics. And, you know, in the program, we've talked a lot about like toolboxes. And I even made this analogy to my friend the other day. And I was, you know, I think it's so, and consumption. I think it's so easy whenever we hop on TikTok and we do our little TikTok university search and we're looking at people who can have these tips and tricks. Tips and tricks are great. Building your toolbox is great, but you can't run a hammer and a drill at the same time effectively. Right. So I think that getting back to the basics and just trying to do, you know, one or two things that work for you. And when you've mastered that and when you feel comfortable with that, then adding in another tool. But I think that is somewhere where we sometimes go wrong, is that we're like trying to pick up all the tools at one time, and sometimes we're dropping them on the floor instead of being able to utilize them. So that's another thing, is that like making a list of things that go in your toolbox and building that toolbox, but figuring out what works for you, because it's different for every person. Agreed. I'm excited to help them fill their toolbox today. And I love the pictures that you paint. I'd like to just go back to what you said too, because there is a level of perfection and a level of, I don't even know what's more than perfection, a consistent raising of the bar that can happen. And I think that the listener, hey listener, by the way, because I'm going to forget you're there, I'm sure at one point, because it's just Kendra and I talking, but I think it's important for the listener to understand that when we're talking about this, we are women that live. Like, we go to the bar and we drink beer sometimes and we play pool and like we go have witchy photo shoots in the fucking Missouri wilderness, whatever. Like, Kendra and I are not telling you this because we have reached this level of perfection, like I said, or because we have a bar that we feel like we have. No, like, we are full ass human beings. Kendra and I have conversations about heaviness and getting stuck and resistance. And the reason that we're here talking to you is because we believe that being solution oriented is how you move through life with a lot more ease and you stay healthier in your mind, your body, your soul. So we're not telling you this because we are reaching this pinnacle of understanding. There's so much more for us to learn and know. We're sharing this because if we can fucking do it, you can fucking do it. Like, my gosh. Kendra straight up saw me at some of the worst times of my life. Like, Kendra and I became friends when I was literally at my rock bottom. I was living at rock bottom. I was heavily drunk at rock bottom. Like, it was rough. And we know in our own spaces from our own rock bottoms how it can feel there, especially in the mind. And it's really important. Again, I'm going to say this one last time, and then we're going to jump into these cheat codes. You need to understand that we only are talking to you about this because we have had to practice these in our lives consistently. And we believe in these because we know them. We have the evidence. We are the evidence. So please take what we're about to say and sit with it. Don't brush this off. Like, we are two women that are so real, and we're like, bro, this shit works. Like, just give it a shot. So I'm going to ask you to get your notebook out, your journal out, a piece of paper out, something. Get a fucking poster board. And we're going to go through some cheat codes.
And I'd like to kind of go through a couple for them, Kendra, and then are you cool with me reading that paragraph about
Yeah, get it, girl.
affirmations?
Mhm.
Cool. Okay. All right. So we're going to give you these cheat codes, and I'm also going to give you some resources. So make room on your page. The first one I'm going to give as one of my favorite cheat codes is just to use the rewire method that I teach in the program. It's an easy 4-step method. It's not something brand new. Like this, we're all teaching the same stuff. It just has some tweaks and personalization. So the way that I teach it, my personal method is 4 steps. It wasn't always 4 steps. It was 3 steps the first time that I met Kendra because I didn't fully understand the importance of the somatic work and teaching it at that time. I thought that it was something that would just happen, but it does not. It needs to be something that is a practical, simple step for us to remember to move our body. So 4 steps: acknowledge, question, replace, move. That's one of my cheat codes for you guys. So when you have a thought that comes up, a feeling, an emotion, memory, whatever it is, it can be anything. But when it pops up, acknowledge it. Don't run from it. Look at it, be with it, be present with it, accept it, be like, this is what it is right now. And then move into the question piece. And this is where it really depends on where you are on your journey and what you want to fucking dive into. You can do inner child work here with the why and the questioning. You can get real curious and figure out what's the root of this. How far back does this go? That's when you're going to be in a space where it'd be really good to have more support, I think. And I think Kendra would agree. Going into those spaces with inner child work, shadow work, anything like that, it's going to be really nice to have some sort of support, some sort of guidance. But then you move into the replace piece. And I think that it's really important when you're looking at these 4 steps to not misunderstand the replace step. It is not spiritual bypassing. It is not bypassing of any kind. If you are choosing to only see the positive and replace it with positive, but you don't actually fucking believe that, then you're just creating something else that you're going to have to revisit later in the future. Faking it will not help you make it. You have to believe it. You have to know it, or you at least have to be willing to accept it until you do believe it, until it is something that's part of you. So the replace it with a thought, replace it with a feeling that is attainable but pushes you up against your edge. Like maybe I live my dream life and I have this in my bank account and these are my relationships and this is my, like, whatever your thing is, maybe you're not at a place where saying that level 100 is happening, then say that level 50 is happening. Push yourself out there. Don't go so far as to put yourself outside of your window of tolerance because your body is not going to agree to that. Your body's already going to need you to come back down and be grounded so you can feel safe in what you're saying. But if you're so far fucking out there because you're dreaming big, which is always good to dream big, but you don't believe your shit, you're going to have to reel it in just a little bit so that way you can press the edge. And then the last one is to move your body, which in this 4 step, it can be anything. It can be dancing, it can be tapping, it can be humming, it can be jumping up and down. Just move your body. And I would say for that 4th step of move your body is to let it be intuitive. Ask your body what the fuck it needs. If you feel like you're a top that's fucking wound tight as hell, maybe you need to shake your ass a little bit. If you feel like you have all this pent up stuff and you're going to explode, maybe you need to jump up and down, pound your chest, and scream a little bit. So the cheat code is acknowledge, question, replace, and move. And that is the rewire method that I teach. So Kendra, what's one of your cheat codes?
One of my favorite cheat codes is affirmations. We were talking about neuroplasticity and how these can change the way that we think and the way we approach ourselves. Yes. And I believe you wanted to share some of the research that I provided you on affirmations.
I do. Do you want me to do that right now for you?
Yeah, girl.
Yeah. So Kendra has here a large body of literature, however, demonstrates that a class of interventions called self-affirmations have benefits across threatening situations. Affirmations can decrease stress, increase well-being, improve academic performance, and make people more open to behavior change. I'm going to stop there. Tell us more about your favorite cheat code affirmations, because that's incredible.
So that was a lot of big words, and I know, but let me just tell you in lay terms. I'm from the Midwest. I used to be four-wheeling all the time. So like the way that my brain thinks about affirmations and manifestation and cheat codes like this is a four-wheeler trail. So if you're in a field and there's been this four-wheeler trail that's been there for years and years and years and years, it's a little rutted up and it's super easy to fall into, but that's the trail that you take all the time. Maybe you want to take from point A to point B in a different direction. When you first drive that trail, it's going to be a little bumpy. You're driving over some grass. There might be a rock or two. You might not trust that trail yet. You have to drive that trail a lot before you really trust the trail, before it's actually a trail, before there are ruts. So when I think of, neuroplasticity, these affirmations are a way to do that. So, we've had this and we talked about this in the program. It's hard for women to sometimes look at themselves in the mirror, especially naked, especially without judgment. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that her and I did in the program is that she made me look at myself in the mirror for a couple minutes. Mm-hmm. And then when I could do that for like 5 minutes. And then when I could do that, I would talk to myself about how I was worthy, about how I should be loved, about how I was worth it. So I think that the first couple times that we say these things to ourselves, we might not have the confidence and the believability, but we want to believe it. And that's the first step. So I think that whenever we repeat these affirmations to ourselves, we start believing it. And that starts being our new way of inner thinking and our new way of that our brain reacts to certain situations. We start walking with our chest puffed out a little more. We start walking with a little more confidence at work and at, meeting these relationships because we are worthy and we are worthy to be loved. But I think that it takes those processes and it takes being willing to walk a new trail for us to be able to form those new paths in our brain.
Yeah, 100%, 1,000,000%. Well, and that goes kind of into what I was saying with the replace thing, like the affirmations, you're going to need to build on those. You're going to need to allow yourself some time, have some patience. Overall, at the end of the day, who you are, I don't remember who said this, maybe you know, and we can quote them, but you are some of all of your experiences. And the reason you act the way you act, the reason you behave the way you behave, the reason you say what you say, the reason you have the perspective you have is because of all the experiences you have had. And in knowing that, you have to understand that the way that you're acting, the things that you say, the words that you think, the narrative and the story that you create in your mind is an adaptation to every single thing that you have ever experienced. So it's a habit. Mm-hmm. It is a habit that you created and you've been molding it the whole time. So you can still mold it. Mm-hmm. You can still create more. And when you're doing work like this, it's important to see that when you're replacing, let's say, I can't do this, it's not possible. When you replace it with, yeah, I can get there. Like you said, the first couple times, it's not going to feel true, most likely, or it's going to be a little bit of a resistance. But that's probably how you felt the first time you tried any of the shit that got you to where you are. Like if you look at the process and how it works and you zoom out from everything so you can be like, oh, this is how I work. I tick. This is what my brain does. It is to allow you to feel more empowered, not for you to feel as though you have to hit a rock bottom in order to change something or, oh my gosh, it didn't work the first 2 times, so I must be broken. No, and other things that I've heard or I've felt. Like these are the things as humans we can feel when we start to see this process. But if you just take a few of these cheat codes and you do them on repeat, like those affirmations, like the ones we're about to tell you too, you're going to start believing these things. It's going to sink in a little bit deeper and you're going along the same fucking path you were going anyways, but this way you're at least choosing where you're headed. You are going to adapt and create new habits and new behaviors regardless. That's what humans do. So at least do it and be intentional with it.
And these are also self-reflective of our core values. So, yes. When we start thinking about these things that we deserve, we start thinking about what we want and what we want to deserve. We start thinking about, what do we want in a partner? What do we want in our future life? And so we start thinking of these core values where maybe before we had hopes for things like this, but we didn't really have a definition of what it should look like or feel like. And I think when we start looking at these affirmations and we start digging in, it also starts asking ourselves, what do we want and what do we deserve? And then we start deserving it.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. I'm going to read the rest of this. Actually, no, you read the rest of it. That's what we had talked about. You read the second half, girl.
Yeah. So that paragraph goes on to say self-affirmations are acts that affirms one's self-worth. They often, by having individuals reflect on core values, which may give individuals a broader view of themselves. And then this in turn allows individuals to move beyond specific threats of integrity into self-competence. So, I think that a lot of times we feel a little lost in the world. And I think that this can help. Not only are we forming a new trail within our brain, but we're giving ourselves a new self of direction as we're proceeding through purpose, as we are finding our direction in our job, as we're finding our direction in our relationships and our friendships. Like our friendships, we might start living in better integrity now that we know we deserve it. We might get rid of some of those friends that aren't going to pick us up on the road at 3 a.m. if our car breaks down. And we're going to start hanging out with the friends who would come play pool at us after 3 a.m. when they pick us up from the car. Like us.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that self-affirmation, I think in the beginning feels kind of nervous making, but so did a lot of things. So did when you started learning to tie your shoe. So did when you started learning to write and things like this. They weren't super comfortable because they weren't practiced. If we can practice these things and they can become second nature to us, they can be a tool that can really drive us, both our values and our integrity, in the direction that we want to head.
Fucking yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to disarm any resistance that the listener might be having. Okay. Because you and I both know, as we're talking about the resistance that can come up, it's easier when we can feel it inside. So some resistance that I've heard with resistance like this, well, I have this inability. I'm unable to do this. I can't focus that well. My kids, my job, my husband, my this, like there's a list, right? So listener, I want you to figure out what yours is. Like figure out what your resistance to like, oh, this probably won't work. Or another big one is the past. So things that we learned, right? So my mom didn't teach me. My dad didn't teach me. That's not how I was raised. It's not the environment that I was raised. You don't understand. It's too ingrained in me. It's in my system. Like these are some of the things that I hear too. So whether it's time constraints, or maybe you're not feeling totally capable, or maybe you're feeling stuck in this, well, I never learned it, and that's really not fair, and that sucks for me. Like whatever it is, we all get stuck. Figure out what your stuckness is. I think that if the listener can identify your stuckness and also like send it to Kendra, send it to have a conversation with us. We'd love to. Kendra, you want to let them know your Instagram so they can reach out?
Oh yeah. My Instagram is just kgeorge1422. Like feel free to message me if you have questions. If you just need to kind of talk about something, like I'm there. You can DM me, no problem.
I love that. So you got your resistance in mind and you have Kendra's information now, and we'll give it to you in the show notes too. But I want you to look at that resistance, and I want to have you ask yourself, we're going to go through the rest of these cheat codes. Is that resistance the priority? Is that what you want? Is that what you want to keep? Is that I say this with love, is that the excuse that you want to keep in a pattern with? Or are these really simple, really quick, really easy cheat codes that Kendra and I are going to give you? Are these going to be the priority? Because you get a choice in this. This is not that your brain is stuck. This is not that your brain is broken. This is Kendra and I saying, hey, why don't you give this a try instead? Like, give it a shot, because the decision really comes down to not whether or not you can do this, even if you can stay consistent. It's which one's the priority. Is staying in the, I can't, I don't have time, you don't understand all these things. Is that the priority? Or is, you know what? I want to fucking feel good, think good, be good, have good. Like, which one is it? So, I think let's go to visualization, because I love our visualizations. I want to talk about the visualization cheat code. So this goes into like, overall, I think with cheat codes, always use your senses, always use your, like you said, senses. I usually tell clients or anybody I speak to, always make it an experience, always make it emotional. Like, set your space, light the candle, make it a smelly room that's incense or candle, whatever you want, put on music, have something cozy and comfy. Like if you can include everything, that's the experience. That's how you're going to change in the moment. So with visualization, a few things that I wrote down here is really what you're doing if we're looking at the science end, which I think is important for this episode. We are mentally rehearsing desired outcomes. That's what you're doing in visualization. You are understanding that your brain doesn't recognize, it doesn't comprehend that if it's the past, the future, the present, whatever it is, if it's you visualizing, if it's you in the moment, because it activates the same neural circuits regardless. Whether you're doing it in your mind and you're deep, deep, let's say you get into the spiritual and you're like, I did third eye visualization, I went deep into that. That's the same to your brain as you physically doing the thing. It's the same thing. So visualization, I think, is one of my favorite cheat codes because it's so easy. And I think one of the easiest things for me to do is put myself into kind of like a POV visualization. Sometimes in visualization, it is nice to be able to see yourself almost like you're watching a movie. But I feel like when it comes to mindset shifts, energy shifts, this type of work of rewiring and reframing, allowing yourself to try the POV. So kind of like our money one that we have done, like looking at your money on your computer screen or watching yourself kind of make things happen. I think that that visualization is really powerful, especially for it to be a cheat code that creates really long lasting and quick effects. What do you think about visualization?
Yeah, I think, as going through the program, I think the one that resonated with me the most was a visualization that you had me do. And this is going to be a very simplified version. But essentially, I was in a safe space. I imagined myself in my home, and the new version of me walked into the room. How did that person carry themselves? How did they look? How did their face look? How did they interact with you? What did they tell you? That was a very emotional guided visualization for me. And like I said, this is a very simplified analogy of that or summarization of that. But I think imagining myself as the person I wanted to be and the way that they carried themselves and the peace that they held was very important. And I think that when you're doing that in your brain, it's hard to imagine yourself as this person today. Whereas if you're imagining that person from the future, it's a little bit easier to do. I also had a really good one that I listened to on a podcast yesterday from a Dr. Martha Beck that was
Tell me about
a
it.
sensory guided visualization. Would you like me to walk you through it really fast?
Yes, I would. Yes, I would.
So first, think about something that gives you mild anxiety. You can either share it with us or not, whichever you feel most comfortable with, but just like mild to moderate anxiety.
Okay. I would say medium scale public speaking, being on a stage of that way.
Fair.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us can relate to that. Most of us have probably given speeches either in school or in some other fashion. That's very anxiety making. So I can get that. So kind of feel for a second how you feel. Like, where do you feel that in your body when you feel that when you're in front of a crowd, you've just walked out, you haven't started yet. How do you feel?
Seen to a level of excitement and to a level of vulnerability. And it's definitely, right below my boobs. It's in the solar plexus for sure.
All right. So close your eyes for me for a second. So you're going to imagine that you have your hand out held, and in your hand, I place an orange. So that orange is heavy. It's cool. I probably just pulled it out of the refrigerator, and it has weight to it. You're going to take that orange and you're going to touch it with your other hand, and you're going to feel the texture. It's a little bit rough, kind of smooth, and you start to peel it. So you put your thumb in the end of that orange, and there's always a little bit of essential oil that sprays out. How does that smell? It kind of surrounds you, and now it's on your fingers. Your finger is now a little sticky as you start to peel the orange back. As you start to work that skin back, you can even feel the pulp in between. That's what's holding the skin onto the orange. So you start to peel it away. The skin is now gone. You're able to go ahead and start separating that orange, and you take a piece and a slice out. You take that slice and you move it to your mouth, and before you put it in your mouth, you can kind of smell that fragrant orange. You go ahead and you take a bite. It's really juicy, starts to run down your throat, and that just reminds you of like a summer day. Okay, go ahead and open your eyes. Is that feeling in your solar plex? What does it feel like now? What does your body feel like?
In my solar plexus, it feels very warm and very calm, and I feel so much more present.
Yeah. So what's fantastic about our brain, and mind you, remember, I'm a nurse. I am not a neurosurgeon or a neuroscientist. So for all you researchers out there, I apologize
Right.
ahead of time because this is very oversimplified. But we have a tiny area in our brain called the amygdala. The amygdala is what is responsible for anxiety. Such a very tiny piece of our brain can cause such a huge problem. So creativity and imagination is almost like a flip switch for the amygdala. While one is on, the other one can't be working. So if we have these sensory visualizations and we're imagining, like she was talking about guided visualization, that amygdala is able to shut off. So this is something that we can do if we are out and about. So say you're getting ready to public speak, you can do this visualization with yourself and imagine something very visceral, like peeling an orange, eating an orange, or things such as that. And you can kind of help back that amygdala off before you start doing that thing that's anxiety making. There was another one that we talked about and that Martha Beck had mentioned on the podcast I watched the other day. And it was, this is also to do with creativity. So not everybody's an artist, right? But everybody signs their name. So you have a piece of paper in front of you?
Yes, I'm ready for this.
Woo! So let's just make it your first name because we'll it might get long if we do the other.
Right.
So just sign your first name in a signature fashion, how you would normally do any loops or half cursive or however we sign anymore.
Okay.
So now under that,
Mm-hmm.
try to do the exact same signature but backwards.
Okay.
At first, it feels a little uncomfortable.
Right. I'm going to ask the listener too. Do this with us. Do this with us. That's why we want you to join in on it. Okay. So it might feel a little bit uncomfortable.
Might feel a little bit uncomfortable, but just kind of let yourself go. Let yourself be loopy with it.
This is so fun.
Well, this is a really easy way to get into creativity. So like that turns the left side of your brain on and makes you go ahead and have to kind of focus on something else. Not everyone is going to want to paint a paint by number or do a puzzle,
Right.
although those are great ways to do it. Coloring books they have out, all sorts of things. They have, paint by follow along and paints on Facebook and whatever else people host. But if you're sitting at the office and this isn't something, you don't have a coloring book with you, this is a way to just kind of turn that creative side of your brain on. And it's one of those things that if you try harder, it almost gets harder to do. Mm-hmm. You have to almost let yourself be creative and see your signature in a backward fashion to be able to go ahead and rewrite it. And so it really does make you turn off your thinking part of your brain. It's a nice little trick to kind of get out of that space of, I just had this business meeting or I have this meeting coming up. Try the signature trick and kind of get out of your own head for just a second and then restart and you'll be able to restart in a better frame of mind.
Brilliant. That's so awesome. Will you do me a favor, please? And will you, actually, you already sent me the podcast from Dr. Martha Beck. Yes?
I believe I did. I'll make sure that you have it so you can tag it.
Yeah. I'd love to put that in the show notes for them. This is so fantastic. And I think that being able to remember, it reminds me of like being a child, like doodling. Just remember to doodle, like get into it. And this is such a fun way. And it's going to be so much more creative the more that you do it. I love this. What a good cheat code. Kendra, thank you for bringing that. And thank you for doing that with us. That's freaking awesome. And I love the orange one too. We talked about that one before the podcast episode, and that is just so brilliant to be able to walk anyone through. And for the listener, Kendra actually was telling me about this during our recent session. And so she was going through and being very descriptive. And I'm just listening to her and I'm like, you made me fucking mouth water. Like now I want an orange. Like it really is incredible how quickly it works. So thank you so much for sharing that with them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was something that really resonated with me a lot because I know we talked about perfectionism and I like creativity. I like replicating things. I like making things, but I want to do it in a way that I can do well. And if I'm in a position, if I'm at work or if I'm at something where I can't color well, or I don't have these things available to me, these cheat codes give me something else that I can kind of do really quickly. They don't take very long. And they can put me in a different frame of mind.
Love them. So good. Okay, so next cheat code. This is something that we've already talked about. We've pranced on it too a little bit. But to open it up to more of the science end, I want to talk about rituals and ceremonies and how those are a cheat code. Um, just to kind of bring this all back again, it's a lot of what you've already heard, but it really comes down to intentional repetition and emotion. It comes down to creating an experience. And as we all know, the adaptions, the sum of who we are, that is because of consistent, repetitive actions. Um, I say this with love, changes don't come because you think really hard about something. Changes come because you take your thoughts and your emotions and action and you blend it all together, just like mind, body, and soul. So, a ceremony or a ritual really embodies that. And it's also so infused with whatever faith that you have, whatever beliefs that you have. And faith is so powerful. The power of believing in something is quite miraculous at times, but you and I have talked about the difference between believing in something and knowing something, right? And when you know what your faith is, regardless of what it is, even if it's simply a faith that there is something bigger and you do have some sort of support, and that's where it ends, or even less than that. Even still, if you infuse a ceremony, a ritual, something that means something from your heart, and you infuse that faith into it, it's going to make a really big impact. So, a few things that I wrote down here is just to understand, going along with the neuroplasticity work and staying in these terms, it's repetition and it's going to strengthen the neural connections. So the more that you do something, the easier it's going to get, the more that you're going to believe it. This touches on everything we've said previous, including the four-wheeler tracks, because same. We talk about like sledding down a hill in the program, and I'm not going to lie, I'm going to probably start talking about four-wheeler tracks because that fucking hits harder. That means a lot more than the sledding down a hill to me too. So like it's repetition, it's strengthening neural connections, it's letting yourself be creative. I think that's a huge part of rituals and ceremonies, and these can be anything. So I have a small ritual that I do in the morning when I brush my teeth. When I brush my teeth in the morning, I look in the mirror and I am not speaking out loud. That's super important. I think the listener should know that speaking out loud is so important with this stuff. But during this ritual, I speak in my head, and it's a moment of mindfulness. It's a moment of gratitude. It's a moment of intentionally focusing on and repeating in my mind affirmations and desires and steps that I'm taking. It's a moment of celebration, of acknowledgement. That morning ritual while I brush my teeth could easily be a few minutes of me mindlessly looking off, disassociating, thinking about yesterday, thinking about the future from a different perspective. I could just be zoned out completely, or I could be fearful, right? I could be in these lower density emotions. I could be holding energy that's definitely not the energy that's going to get me to where I want to go, or necessarily the energy I would even want to be in. It's intentional to use those minutes in front of a mirror as a ritual. And that's one of the biggest pieces of ritual and ceremony, no matter what culture you're from, no matter how this is alive in your life, it comes down to being intentional. And that's a huge part in the work that we do, the work that I teach, is living an intentional life. So when you are looking at the cheat code of a ritual or a ceremony, it can be brushing your teeth. It can be a whole fucking hour long or day long ceremony and ritual, and you bring all your fucking shit in, but just make sure that it's something that means something to you and you can be creative with it. What
Oh,
were you
I
gonna say,
love
Kendra?
that. I was gonna say I use my shower, or I use
Yeah.
my bathroom mirror too. I just tape my affirmations to them because I
Yes.
have like 4 or 5. Mine are all about money right now.
Love
I
that for
have
you.
them taped and I just recite them while I'm getting dressed in the morning. So I'm looking at
Mhm.
myself. I also do like intentional showers where I have like a body scrub and I feel like I have the weight of the day on me and I just those, I scrape that energy off intentionally as I'm scrubbing those things away. I also felt like it was really important to say, like, I know that we're saying rituals and ceremonies, but like you were saying, this is like God's source, whatever. Like
Yes.
there's any end of the spectrum. Like you can do these things as far as like you can light a candle, have incense or whatever. This could also just be you praying or filling out filling out a journal and talking about the things that you feel as you pray.
Yeah.
I come from both ends of that. I was raised in a very religious household. Um, so I think that I think that sometimes people veer away from the woo because they think that it's demonic or ritualistic or all these things. But really, when we are talking about intention, is what it comes down to. And like, you can have intention with God. Like, your faith, your belief, your heart is where it's going. It's all about just living your life in intention. So if that's where your faith and your heart is, just have intention while you do it. If your intention is to, you know, have some crystals and go dance naked in the moonlight, do intention with that too. That's great. However you, you know, take your shoes off and dig in the dirt, and however you connect with yourself and your soul, by all means do it. But just because it has ceremony or ritual attached to it, don't be nervous about it. It's all about intention. And it's all about living your life with intention and doing these things that you focus on. Like I love manifestation and talking about manifestation. And that's all it is intention. It's just paying attention. Like you're focusing on these things that you want, and now you are available for all the opportunities that are going to present themselves. Like my favorite analogy to people at work is like, if you want a new job, so maybe you were walking through life with your podcast in, not paying attention to whatever else. And normally you might just walk through the grocery store and not pay attention. Now that you have a new job on your mind, and with intention, you have said, you know, I'm ready for it. I think I'm ready for a move, whatever. Now you're walking through the grocery store and you start hearing about this new job that's opening up, and you might hear where it's available. Now you have this opportunity to go and get that thing that you manifested. So I think I love like the terms like ceremony and manifestation, all this stuff, but really a lot of this is just being aware of our soul and our gut and our intention of where we're headed to. And I think that sometimes, especially people in the Midwest, get real nervous about things that are including. Just saying, don't knock it till you try it. Like there is a lot of ritualistic stuff that is in the church and in religion. You should still do those things that make you happy and your soul happy. Just do everything with intention.
Right.
And especially if you're going to go dance naked in the moon, definitely intentionally, and maybe away from children. But
just figure out spaces to go. Just leave everybody else behind. Grab your girlfriends.
Be intentional about where you plan it.
Right. Dude, can I just tell you, yes to everything, of course. And just last night, Trav and I were talking about, you know, where, I mean, I took you around my hometown bars. Like, that's how we met, is I was like, hello, welcome to small town USA. And we were joking about how in small town USA, it's so interesting how those blue collar boys, those fucking Midwest men, they like themselves some witchy bitches. That's their fucking bread and butter, my dude.
Yeah, you like, have some dark makeup on, alternative rock tea, you're my girl.
Dude, it's like, it is flies on fly paper. Like, you and I, can you stand up and show them your outfit, actually? Because I was just getting ready to talk about, like, how we are. Like, can we just take time? If you're only listening and not watching on YouTube, please get over here. Appreciate this outfit. This is a whole fucking vibe. I love it.
My Grand Canyon tee. I love national parks and go for hiking. So I like to be a little professional while I'm also supporting my things that I love. But yeah.
I love it so much, dude. That style it's born and bred in the Midwest. I personally believe, like, what do they call it? Y'all-ternative, where you're country and emo.
Yes. Yeah. 100% still into emo. You know, they still have a get together now. I think I told you about this. I'm going to go again. It's called We Were Young, and it is all alternative music. It's in Vegas. I think they've already sold tickets. You're going to have to go next year. But there is still a huge following. But what's great is that we're all like 30-somethings. So we're all at this concert, and everybody's like, oh, excuse me. Oh, sorry about that. Like, everybody's really polite. Like, nobody's like, one girl got really drunk and someone's like, can I help you? And like, it was really nice. Like, it was a vibe because everybody was we're all old, but it was highly recommend if you all are into alternative music.
Yeah.
I don't have
we should go next year.
I don't have any associations with them, but it was fantastic. Yeah, we should. I'm down.
I think we should definitely, like, I'm not exaggerating. Once we get off here, like, let's make a plan and let's get that set. That would be fantastic. I'd love that.
Yeah, I love it. We should go. It would be great. Trav can come too.
I'm gonna call this a girls' weekend. That's what I'm gonna call it. Unless you are also bringing along somebody else, there's just gonna be a you and I thing.
That's totally fine. I don't care. Just know he's always invited if you want. Like, I'm always, you know, I'm a broski too. So like, I don't have third wheel energy. I mean, like,
you don't.
I'm not gonna like jump on top of you while you're kissing or anything, but like at the same time, like I can like fist bump him and be totally fine with, you know,
Right. I do know.
I'm
That's one of
for
my
it.
favorite things
I'm
about
all
you,
about it.
right? I think that's one of the reasons that we get along so well, honestly, is we hold a lot of bro energy. Like there's no amount of this work that will deplete the amount of a bro I am at heart.
Nope. It doesn't take, it only takes a couple of drinks before somebody wants to be like, you want to arm wrestle or you want to like, and I'm like, yes, I
Dude,
do. You want to hit that thing in the corner that tells you how hard you hit the punching
you're
bag?
damn right I
Yes,
do. Yes, I
I sure
do.
do. If I win, do I get a free drink? Because I'm going to win. I'm definitely going to win.
And
I'm,
while you're doing that, I'm going to control the jukebox so that way it's like the perfect setup music for
yes,
you.
yes.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
damn it,
100%.
Kendra. Why don't we live within 20 minutes of each other? It
I
should
know.
happen.
It might be too much for the world to handle. That might be some of the universes. Like, it's like you can't heal enough. You need some space because you might be a lot for the world. Fire and gasoline.
Fire and Gasoline 2.0. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I love it. Okay, let's talk about one last piece with intention, ritual ceremony. I love what you said about the religious and the faith and the all of that. It is so important to understand that this is a personalized process. If the word ritual, if the word ceremony isn't something you vibe with, then don't use those words. Use prayer. If and like with my family, there's a lot of people where I switch out words and I'll point to that to them because a lot of the time I'll talk about meditation with my siblings, for instance, and I'll be like, yo, what I'm talking about is prayer for you. Same thing, same Z's. So I think that that's important to point out for the listener is it really comes down to your belief systems. Truly, it really does. And you should figure out what fits you. And when when you're doing this, you were talking about being intentional with like the moonlight and dancing under it, which I agree. Please be careful because not everybody understands. Some people think it's like I heard recently from a family member, are you worshiping the devil? And I was like, oh fuck, we're on this again. Okay.
Mm-mm.
Right.
Positive vibes
Like
only.
right, right. We don't rock that way. So be intentional with where you do your ceremonies and rituals. Remember they're sacred. And also be aware of who you're doing them with and around. I think that this comes down to a respect factor that not everybody has the same beliefs as you, just like you don't have the same beliefs as them sometimes. So just understanding that some people might not be comfortable with you dancing in the moonlight naked with your girlfriends. Some people might be like, what the fuck is this shit? So just being aware. Another cheat code. Oh yeah, we have time. You have time on your end, right,
Oh
babe?
yeah.
Cool. Another cheat code I'd like to talk about is one that we have been using a lot lately in the program, which is just simply interrupting and replacing. So I talked to you guys in the program about literally snatching it up out your head, like making the movement and everything. And I believe personally, and it's science backed, that you're going to want to pair it with something physical. You're going to want to pair it with some sort of a movement. And you can think of these also kind of like a trigger in the best way possible. It's triggering you to be like, oh, that's right, I'm removing this. So some things I wrote down to see this from a more scientific side is that you are stopping them midstream to prevent the reinforcement. And that's the big thing because again, it's habitual, it's habits of the same thoughts and the same patterns. So if you interrupt this, you are again midstream interrupting it, and you're not going to reinforce and build a bigger foundation underneath of the thought that you don't want to have or the belief that you don't. So, for instance, if you have this lack of self trust, lack of self confidence, or perceived lack, and you want to build it up, and you have a thought that comes through of I'm not enough, I don't know enough, I'm going to have this happen and this happen. If you interrupt that midstream, you are not adding more bricks to the house of belief of I'm not good enough and this is a failure, whatever. So understanding how important just simple interruption for yourself is, I think that doing that and then replacing it with, I personally do like an atta girl, like a go get 'em. That's kind of what reinforces me and the way I want to go. I'll catch that shit and I'll be like, bitch, what do you want to do? How do you want to be? What life you want to live? Are we living in the past today or are we going forward? Like, I like to get some momentum going. And it's really a moment of interruption and not only replacing, but I like to reinforce who the fuck I am as there's a thin line between being fulfilled and full of yourself, and that's the line that this walks. Who the fuck are you? Remember who the fuck you are when you interrupt these moments, because in that moment, when you interrupt, when you take that action, this cheat code of just simply interrupting the thought pattern, the feeling pattern, your next choice, your next decision is really important, because you're deciding who the fuck you are. And if you interrupt something and you create this new neurological pathway, or you start getting on it even more of one of like, oh, I guess I'm okay. Like, it's okay. You're going to believe you're just okay. You're going to believe that things are just mediocre. But if you start to say, you know what, fuck yeah, I am a fucking badass. I can fucking do this. Let's go fucking get it. You're reinforcing something that's way more powerful, way more empowering, and it's going to lead you down a much different path. So how do you feel about interruption and replacing?
That really reminds me about, while you were talking about reinforcing that, about this,
Yeah.
the lucky girl syndrome that we talked about.
Yeah.
So like, I frequently have to use that at work. If I'm having a particularly busy day, like the most recent one I had, and not everybody can relate to this. This is definitely a nurse thing, but, like I had to take somebody's blood sugar, and there's those little things that stick your finger, and I didn't have one in my pocket. And I like looked at my counter, and somebody had left one, and I was like, oh, all things go my way. Like I didn't have to walk out of the room and down the hallway to get this. Like I had it, and I was like, I think that when we're talking about reinforcing these thought processes, like we could go in and be like, I'm going to have a shitty ass day. But if we are like, I'm going to have a good day, and then we start reinforcing it with these positive things that we're finding, we're going to start looking for more. We're going to keep looking for, we're going to get excited. It's like a Where's Waldo? Like we're going to look for more things that are happening that are good for the day. And we're going to stop. I mean, it's not that nothing bad is going to happen. Like none of these things are like, oh, your life is going to be perfect. You're never going to have anything difficult happen to you. Of course not. You're going to have bad stuff, but like what, this could make a day that's like just so into a day that was like, that was great. I found everything I needed. I never dropped a thing.
Right.
Like I never lost my pen. Great. Like it's the little things in life that we have to find those things. And when you were talking about reinforcing these thoughts and kind of stopping them before they happen, it made me think of that. It made me think of when we're looking for positivity, we're going to find more positivity, and that's what we should be looking for. Like when you start having the, oh my God, I have to do these things and I don't have them available. Like you might not even notice that Lancet was there. You might be so mad that you didn't have it in your pocket. You just walk out and don't realize you have one. But if you're looking for positivity, you're like, oh, there's one that I found. Oh my God, all things go my way. Like, fantastic.
Dude, that's literally right back to what you were saying before with the switch. Basically, you cannot focus on a problem and a solution at the same time. You cannot be in creative. And what did you say? I don't want to misquote you. What was the switch?
Like you can't focus on creativity while that anxiety is happening. So like if your amygdala is on, your creativity can't be. And if your creativity is on, same with positivity and negativity. Also, this is a side tangent, but I don't know if you hear what sounds like an elephant running around my house, but my dogs are playing. So if the listeners hear that, I'm so sorry. I have 2 cattle dogs. One is in a cone of shame, and it sounds like they're having a good old time. So if you hear that in the background, no one is dying. Everyone is fine. They're having a great time.
Since the listener doesn't know this, I just need them to know that I was very honored to have been there moments or days, I think it was, after Coop was born. And he was the cutest little pupper dogs that I've ever seen. And the fact that you have him, it just makes me so happy. Like
a little jelly bean.
I love it. He's a chonk. Him and George are both chonkers.
They're so chunky. We went to dog behavior training the other day, and she looked at Evo and was like, oh, he's very food motivated. And I was like, oh, yeah, you think? Like, he's thicker than a Snicker.
Oh, I can say that about myself sometimes, you know. Very food motivated.
Very food motivated. You know, this is just, it's like cheat codes. You just have to know what carrot to dangle and what will make you want to chase the carrot. Like sometimes it's chocolate, sometimes it's steak. That's all right. Like there ain't nothing wrong with that. As long as you know what to put on the thing to get you motivated.
Right.
Sometimes it's Mountain Dew. Sometimes it's a beer. It just depends.
Dude, it was a beer last weekend. Fucking shit. Can I just tell you, side note, side tangent?
Yeah.
Moving to Iowa, moving back to not this area, but moving back to the Iowa area after all the places we've lived, which you totally understand because of being a traveling nurse, and like just it's so much exploration and it's so much fun. And I dare everybody to move out of their hometown. I fucking dare you, because oh my gosh, there's such a big world out there. The world is so much bigger in Reynolds, Illinois. The world is so much bigger than your hometown bar and your hometown Walmart. And those things are beautiful and incredible and amazing, but there is so much more. And it has been the coolest journey. And now that we're here, it's like this infusion with hometown because like having a high V again, I don't know why, but that means something. Being able to shop at
They're
high
the
V, I know
best.
it's grocery store, all these in high V. Like we were there, and do you know how they have like the pick six for the beer and
Yes,
everything? Bro, bro, no one else has that shit. And if they
I
do
love it.
have that, it's not as good. Like there's one in Tennessee that had it, but they didn't have as good of a selection.
Oh,
We were craving beer not that long ago, and like we walked down the aisle at High V of like their craft beer aisle, and it was like,
Hy-Vee's the best. You know,
yes,
Hy-Vee has dietitians. Hy-Vee lets you
yes.
cook. Hy-Vee has breakfast with beer. Like
What?
I never lived in your area, and then when I lived there,
Yeah,
they have programs. They have things like where like you can be like, oh yeah, I'd like to I'm trying to eat a little healthier. You can meet with a dietitian.
yeah, at High
And then
V.
like if you work night shift and you want to go get a beer and a burrito, they have breakfast and a beer in the morning. Hy-Vee is the best. I wish I had them down here. I miss them. It might be one of the few things I miss about like
You don't have them?
no, we don't have Hy-Vees. We're redneck as shit. We just have Walmart. It's
Shit,
terrible.
man.
I know. I'm stuck with whatever I can. So I just have to make my own burrito and beer.
Yeah. Oh, love that.
Hy-Vees
Great
are
side
Hy-Vees
tangent.
are the bomb.com.
Yeah, this is not sponsored by Hy-Vee, but it should be.
No,
Hy-Vee,
it
reach
should
out.
be. They're great. I love
Let me
them. We
know.
need them everywhere.
Right. Okay, let's go ahead and wrap this up. Let's go through the cheat codes for them so they can make sure the listener that they have all of them. I think that'd be super helpful. And then I have one more, and I'd love to hear if there's any other ones you want to touch on. So I'll pop mine off if you want to go ahead and go through yours as well afterwards. The first one is the rewire method, you guys. It's just my method. It's just what I created. It's a lot of intuitive work, a lot of wisdom and knowledge mixed together, and it's simple. It's 4 steps: acknowledge, question, rewire, or I'm sorry, replace and move. And with acknowledge, question, replace, and move, there's a lot that lives inside of those. And I think that the bottom line is just to understand that you have the power of choice. I think that's an important piece of that process. You have a power of choice, and you do have the option to be mindful, and you do have the capability to change your focus and therefore change your life in the moment. It really comes down to whatever you think is a priority. It's not that you're not strong enough. It's never been that you're not strong enough. And that's one of the biggest things I hear from every single woman, every single time. It's something about like, it's too much. It is too much. We need help. We need floaties sometimes. Sometimes we need other types of support, but you still can do it. And this goes back to what Kendra and I said in the very beginning. If we can fucking do it, you can fucking do it. Next one is visualization as a cheat code. There's a lot of different ways you can do this. I have, just a side note for the listener, I have so many visualizations that I have for you guys for free. So many. So many. So please send me a DM if you want some guided visualizations. I have one from the recent fall retreat that I've given out a few times, and that one's a really good one, and it's about identity. So if you have anything around how you act, how you behave, who you believe you are, believing you're worthy or deserving, that identity one would be really good. Intentional repetition and emotion, ritual or ceremony, just understanding that that's a cheat code. Interrupting and replacing, that's the last one we just talked about, is just truly interrupting to prevent that reinforcement and instead empowering it, or choosing something that's empowering that you're going to reinforce. So I think those are it for me. What did you have for the cheat codes form, lady?
Well, mainly we had talked about affirmations and about
Yes.
doing them in an intentional fashion. So do what I do, post them, put them on a post-it, snap them on your bathroom mirror, wherever. And say them when you're doing things in the morning time. I think that's the easiest. In the morning and the evening, you're looking in the bathroom mirror doing something.
Right.
Then we talked about the sensory guided visualization stuff, like the putting yourself into that like orange or, something like that, which I can record one for you and send actually. And then if anybody wants it, you have it to be able to forward to them on the guided
Are you sure?
visualization. Absolutely. I'll record one and send to you just so you have it.
That's incredible. Thank you.
You're so welcome. And we had talked about, signing your signature and then trying to write and sign it backwards. That's going to put your brain into creativity instead of into anxiety. It's a way that you can go ahead and, I mean, like I said, you're welcome to do other forms of creativity. Make anything you want to do. Make a crystal thing like I just did. Whatever it might be, which if you want to see that later, I'll show you too.
Please show them and also
my
tell
God.
them how they can order one from you if you're into commissions.
If you want to I love seeing things and thinking that I can just create them. And I saw one of these somewhere and decided I wanted to make it. So I love crystals and crystal type pretty things. You can't really see my office, but I have a bunch of crystals up there. So I made this little like altar tarot card / incense holder thing. This one's all moss agate and bloodstone and adventuring because it's all about money, because that's been my focus lately, has been about money. So this little guy is just I know, look how cool it is. Look at the little goddess. She's a moss agate. She's a moss agate goddess. Oh my God, it's so great. I have little coins and stuff that are in the bottom here that are resined in. So if you guys like stuff like this, if you're wanting something like this, you can get a hold of me on my Instagram too. We can just plan something that you like. I love crafting. It's a way to get me out of my own anxiety. So by all means, let me create you something. But we talked about being creative. So draw your signature. If you're at work, try to draw it backwards, get out of that mindset. And I think the last thing had to go with the snatching the thought. And we were talking about lucky girl syndrome. So if you're looking for positivity, look at that thing that you found. Like, be like, oh, I needed a pen and I found it on the desk. Oh my God, I'm so lucky. Everything goes my way. So you look for those. We talked about glimmers. That's it. It's a Heatherism.
I love
it. Look for the glimmers in life. Look for those things. And when you're looking for them, you're going to find more because you're paying attention and you're going to find those things as they're coming through when you could have missed them before. But
yeah. Oh, okay. 2 things on that. Number 1, it's your evidence bucket. I want to touch on that because I use that term so often. And for all the listeners that are longtime listeners, that's what we're talking about right now. When you're looking for something and you're finding it, those are opportunities to put it in your evidence bucket. Throughout your whole life, your perspective, your behaviors, your personality, your identity, everything about you is consistently being created based off of what you put in your evidence buckets. And if your evidence buckets are full of shit and I'm not good enough and nothing goes my way and life is terrible, if that's what you've collected and stored, that's how you're going to perceive the world and yourself and everything around you. But if you dump that out and you start to find new evidence, like Kendra was just saying, and you decide, you claim, I'm a lucky girl. Of course that happened for me. Of course this showed up. I'm always in the right place at the right time. Everything always works out for me. That's affirmations. That's evidence bucket collection. That is shifting perspective. That is changing your life. And it's something simple. And then what else? There was something else and I forgot. I think it was about glimmers. Anyways, it's important. Do the glimmers, do the glimmer work. If you're always looking, that's what it was. What you focus on expands. It's the back down to rewire, the basics we talk about in the program and the basics I talk about overall. If you decide to focus on something that does not feel good and is not ideal for you, and when I say focus on it, I mean with your thoughts, with your words, speaking about it out loud, speaking about it in your head, all of these things, your behaviors, whatever you focus on is going to get bigger. You're going to see more of it. It's going to sometimes be surrounding you. So if that's the case, you might want to focus on what you actually want. And that doesn't mean to disregard or bypass. It does, however, mean to accept and look directly at what is difficult so you can walk through the fear. You can deal with it as you need to. You can fucking pull up your big girl britches and get some shit done so you can, in fact, focus on what you want to do. So, and some resources I want to give because these are a couple of my favorite humans. Number 1, Dr. Tara Swart. Please, I've been talking to Kendra about her incredible book, The Source, for a while. I rant and rave about it. Dr. Tara Swart is so brilliant. I actually found her years ago on the Expanded podcast with To Be Magnetic. I think or the To Be Magnetic podcast with Expanded. I'm not sure, one way or the other. And they brought Tara Swart in, Dr. Tara Swart, because she was really consulting them and she was their advisor in a lot of different areas, especially with neuroscience, because she is a neuroscientist. Dr. Andrew Huberman is also another incredible resource. And I think it's so awesome that people like him and Dr. Tara Swart have the platforms that they do and they speak about the things they speak about. Dr. Andrew also appeals to a lot of people, like a lot of the blue collar men and women, but mostly the blue collar dudes that I know really find a connection with Dr. Andrew Huberman because he feels similar. He has that vibe. He has that life. And I think that that's really important when you're discussing topics like this, because like we were joking about, these type of topics don't usually find themselves in your small town bars. These topics don't really find themselves in your small town Casey's or Quick Stars or Come and Goes. And it does exist. It is out there, and it's easier to infuse it into your life when you can connect with somebody because you understand them. And I think that that's a really big appeal that he has and that he talks about being able to relate to others. So check him out if you haven't. And then, of course, Dr. Joe Dispenza. He's an oldie but a goodie. I personally really enjoy his work. Some of his meditations are a little bit much for me. And I do say that because sometimes they can be a little bit much for everyone. Do take it slow. Dr. Joe Dispenza know what the fuck he is talking about, and his meditations will take you deep into this work, but you have to make sure that you are ready for the work that he's going to help you do. So those are some resources you can tap into. And Kendra, you put so much work into preparing for this podcast. I'd love for you to share with them everything that you can about resources and whatnot. Oh, hold on. You're on mute. There you go.
Sorry, I did that because the dogs were barking.
You're good. What's up?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd also like to plug the Diary of a CEO podcast with Stephen Hartlett. That's actually the podcast I was listening to that was including Dr. Martha Beck, which I'll send to you so you can attach to the bottom of this podcast. They're another one that I think is really relatable. Not only do they talk about entrepreneurship, but I feel like he does a really good job about having a variety of people of just about questions. He's a pretty good podcast to check out. And then I had Joe Dispenza mentioned. And then the paragraph that we had read before was from a research article by Cassio and O'Donnell that was written in 2016. So I don't know that anybody's really going to want to go down that rabbit hole to read a research paper, but I have included it to Heather. If she wants to include it, she can. And I will go ahead and record a guided meditation about like the orange, about the sensory stuff. And I can include that to you if you want to include it below for this as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Kendra, thank you so much for being here. I just love you.
I just love you. Thank you for having me. I've been so excited about doing this. I've also been so nervous. But I think sometimes we just have to jump in and do it, right? We just have to try the things that are new and you're not really growing if you're not uncomfortable. So I think that we have to do the things in life that make us a little uncomfortable so that we can grow. You're
one of my favorite podcast guests because you're you. Obviously. But also because this conversation is incredible. And I think it's so important and it's very empowering. And it brings so much of what can feel gigantic and overwhelming down to simple steps and easy to understand and tangible. And, things we talked about even with Dr. Andrew Huberman, I think it's really important for people to understand. That's why I pressed on it. We are just two chicks, bro. We're two women that are very dedicated to our own line of this work and how we embody it and how we teach it and how we share it. And this episode, hopefully by now, you've understood that some of the stuff that you're doing is neuroplasticity work, but maybe you didn't fully understand that that's what you were doing. And now you can buckle down and be more intentional. I hope that you leave this podcast and you feel not just empowered, but super capable and in a space where your future looks clear, the steps look clear, and the goal looks not only attainable, but it's a knowing. You know in your heart and in your soul, whatever it is that you're moving towards, these are the steps that you can take and you're going to get there. Kendra, thank you for sharing your brilliance on here.
Thank you. This was so much fun. Thank you so much for having me. This has been an incredible experience.
Good. Thanks for making it incredible. I am so excited for you to come back. You're going to come back from what we were talking about, and we're going to do...
Absolutely.
Good. I want to do some about neuroplasticity. And I think what would be fun is to have people reach out and let us know some of the other areas of this work that they'd like to talk about. What are some of your topics that you'd be down to talk about, just so we know for them to write in?
Sure. I know a lot of people, and especially a lot of things that I have experience with, are people with traumatic brain injury or who have went through some sort of brain surgery or stroke. If you want to talk about some of the science behind that and some of the things that I've found to help others that have had that, that's something that I have a lot of experience with. Um, and like, if you have more questions about manifestation or more about these different kinds of cheat codes, I'm sure that we can come up with some more for you for sure.
Love that. Ooh, a manifestation and co-creation episode feels
Oh,
fucking juicy. I
we could
love
do it
that.
for sure.
Okay. All right, my dear. Well, you know how these episodes end. We always ask them to be kind to themselves and be kind to others and give them some direction if they so choose. So, what would you like to give direction on? Being kind to themselves or being kind to others?
I think being kind to others, I think that we very often don't know what other people are experiencing. That person that cuts us off in traffic, I think it's really easy to just throw them the bird or be like, oh my God, this idiot. But you don't know, maybe they just came from the hospital where somebody that they love is dying or whatever. We don't know. We don't know what the experience of the other person is doing. So I'm always trying to recommend people spreading kindness. Um, I know that sometimes like leaving little notes for people or leaving little bits of love as you go is something that I like to do. It's hard to do right now because there's a lot of snow that are outside. But maybe even just giving them a good thought or giving them a good positivity as you pass them in the grocery store. And then on a better day of better weather, you could leave them something of just positivity or an affirmation for them on their car window or their car, on their windshield wiper. Um, but that's something as I pass somebody in the grocery store, I like to wish them health and wealth and everything good. So,
Yeah. Good stuff. I love that. Such good stuff. And so easy. It's so simple.
yeah,
You can kind of like we were talking about with the brushing your teeth. You can spend the time in the grocery store thinking about your to-do list, everything you need to do, or you can be really intentional with that time.
yeah, I
Love that.
totally agree.
Being kind to yourself. I think what feels right now is to ask yourself what luggage you're willing to set down, what you're willing to release. Um, with the energy that is kind of rolling around right now, especially this is going to be coming out this Friday, actually. This is going to be front and center. I'm going to put this one out. Um, and the energy is really asking all of us, what are you done with that you've been carrying? What are you done with that you've been lugging along with you? Um, for many of us, this is probably a lot to do with our identity or how we perceive ourselves, how we believe we are perceived. Most of the time, with this energy, has a lot to do with childhood. It's usually some sort of habit or a way of being that we picked up in childhood. So I would just ask to be kind to yourself instead of finding yourself later in life in an experience where you are like, oh my gosh, why didn't I just deal with this when I could have dealt with it and it felt easy? Because we've all been there where it's like a rock and a hard place. Know that this energy is flowing through all of us right now in the collective. So use it and use it wisely and be kind to yourself and say, you know what? Instead of finding myself in a rock and a hard place later on because I decided not to set this down, I'm going to set it down right now. I'm going to set it down. I'm going to do it with intention. I'm ready to release this. I'm ready to move forward. Um, I think it's far too often that we don't give credit to those moments and how potent they are to just take a few seconds of our day to really establish what it is that we're releasing in life and what it is that we're reclaiming in life. So do that to be kind to yourself.
And how much luggage are we carrying around because someone else handed it to us and told us we had to carry it?
That also, that fucking also.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I love you, Kendra. I will
I
see
love
you
you.
soon. Thank you
Thanks.
so much for being a part of today's episode. You guys go have fun, use these cheat codes, be kind to yourself, and be kind to others. Have a good one.